it's early or late where you are and you want to study for the Security Plus exam, let's do 10 questions and get after it. So question one, so your company has decided to implement a virtual private network or VPN, which will be used by remote employees to access internal network resources. Which two protocols could you use? Your options are Layer 2 tunneling protocol or L2TP, RAS, which stands for Remote Access Service, PPP, and P2P or PPTP, which stands for point-to-point tunneling protocol. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to figure out your answer. All right, so the key to this one is to really understand what it's asking you to do. The question is asking you not about security, but about connection. So I can already eliminate remote access service as an option because a RAS or a remote access service provides the network operating systems that allow remote access to the network via a dial-up connection. In today's day and age, we don't use dial-up connections for a variety of reasons. So that answer right away is not right. PPP is also used to establish a dial-up connection as well. So those two answers are completely wrong. The key here, TP tunneling protocol. So layer 2 tunneling protocol and peer-to-peer tunneling protocols are going to be the connection for networks over, especially over a broadband connection. So that is going to be our answer there. Okay, so question number two. Question number two says match the attack on the left with the mode of attack given on the right. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and line up these here. So farming would be a web browser attack. Phishing will be an email attack. Spamming will be a social media attack. Phishing and smishing are both mobile attacks. All right, so let me go ahead and explain each one of these real quick here. Farming is where an attacker redirects a website's traffic to another bogus site. I think that's pretty evident. So if you get like a redirect, you're going to one website and then you're getting redirected to a gambling website. It's a good example of farming. Phishing is an email. It's basically trying to impersonate someone in the events that they will click on a link or do some other type of call to action by using email. Spamming is where an attacker sends a message that appears to be coming from the victim's contacts that contains a link to a website that the attacker is marketing. So you see this a lot in like Facebook, at least in my experience. That's where I've seen it a lot, where someone will impersonate someone that you know in your contacts list and they'll strike up a conversation with you, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, just saw this cool bike at this website here, you should probably think about getting one for Christmas for your sons or daughters. So that's where spamming comes in. All right, so now we have vishing and we have smishing. So vishing is where an attacker attempts to discover financials or private information, whereas smishing isn't one that I am aware of, but I use process of elimination on this one. But let's see what Google says in terms of what smishing is. So smishing is a type of cyber attack that uses text messages or messaging apps to trick people into sharing personal information or clicking on malicious links. All right, so this is kind of similar to spamming, just instead of using social media as your attack vector, you're using your mobile phone. So sometimes you have to take a guess at some of these things here, but yeah, that's one I don't really see too often. So all right, let's go to question 3. All right, so question 3 says that you have several servers to which you would like access to be possible. Let me read that again. Okay. You have several servers to which you would like access to be possible only from a designated administrative workstation. Which of the following should you deploy? So our options here are VLAN, Jumpbox, Subnet, and Honeypot. I'm gonna give you a few minutes here to figure out your answer. Not minutes, a few seconds here to figure out your answer, and then we will go here. All right, so let's use the process of elimination here. All right, the question is asking us that we are looking that we have several servers and we would like to have access only from a designated workstation. Take out some of these bluff words here, as they don't really make any sense here. Administrative, this doesn't really matter in this particular scenario. So we want to do, our first thing is a process elimination. Okay, a VLAN, this is more of a router thing. If I want to separate my network traffic virtually, that's what a VLAN is. So that's definitely not the answer. So we can go ahead and mark that completely off. Subnetting is similar to VLAN, but it's being able to segment out your network using subnets. This is IP based. Question isn't asking anything that's really network related, so that's not the answer either. So we can strike that one completely off. The third one that we can strike off is honeypots. So this is actually a technique that makes something on your site or domain attractable to attackers to basically hunt them down and see exactly what it is that they are doing. It's like making something intentionally vulnerable so that you can sense when someone is attacking you. But this question isn't asking anything to that nature at all. So that cannot be the answer. So here our answer is going to be B, jump box. And just so that you know, a jump box is basically a server that's used to access a particular resource. So think of, I'm gonna have to get some better tools here to kind of illustrate this here, but you have your internal network here, you've got your firewall here, and then you have a jump box here, and then you have the internet, okay? And then you have your users over here. So your users over here access the internet. They go through the firewall for authentication purposes. They are asking for a particular resource. The resource or firewall will redirect them to the jump box. After authentication, I know I'm missing a couple of key components there, but it will direct them to the jump box as opposed to letting them go through to the internal networking environment. All right, next one, number 4. Which of the following has firewall as a service as a component? So we have secure access service edge, software defined networking, on-premise, and then network segmentation. All right, so this one's a little bit tricky. So you could probably get away with getting away with eliminating 2 options here. So anytime that you see as a service, this is a good indication that this is being provided by a third party. So anything that is first party related is likely not going to be the answer. Okay, so on premises, you can wipe that completely off the map for this type of question. Network segmentation, this is a technique to segment your network based on some type of risk value. This would imply that, hey, we have control of our network, whereas what I just told you as a service typically means this is being managed partly or wholly by a third party. So D cannot be the answer. Okay, then we have software defined networking and secure access service edge. Now, software defined networking, this is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Mostly used to define networking component, but could also be used if you're using a cloud environment, but that's likely not going to be our answer here. Our answer is going to be secure access service edge, SASE. You'll usually see the acronym here as opposed to the full on verbiage or nomenclature of it. So a SASE is a firewall as a service as one of its components. Other components include secure web gateways, which is SWG, a cloud access broker, which is a CISSP. Tip point, if you're going for your CISSP plus, this is very, very important. A cloud-based security broker, you will definitely get tested on that. A zero trust network is a ZTNA. That's usually not defined as ZTNA. So, all right. So yeah, so this one again, sometimes you got to use process of elimination as your key. All right, so question number 5 says a large financial institution needs to securely manage and grant temporary access to privileged accounts for third-party contractors performing security maintenance. Of the choices given, which solution would be the most appropriate for privileged access management? So our options are informal credentials, password vaulting, just-in-time permissions, and time-limited authorizations. I'll give you a few seconds to come up with your thoughts. Okay, so this one's a bit of a tricky question to answer. So the answer kind of relies into the question. There's some key things in the question that we can kind of delve here to eliminate a few of these things here, okay? So first and foremost, we are trying to grant permissions and access to a third party for performing system maintenance. So their time in our system is very limited. That is the key word here. So right off the bat, we should be able to remove password vaulting, because this is more of being able to securely manage passwords, and that's not what we're doing. We're trying to give them limited access. So that one right there, you strike it out, you get a 75% chance automatically. The key here also is you want to find what the best answer is. So I can tell you off the bat that ephemeral credentials and time limit authorizations, those both sound really, really good. And just-in-time permissions also sounds really, really good. So the answer here is going to be ephemeral credentials. And this is kind of the best of both just-in-time and time-limited authorizations. The word ephemeral means temporary, which I don't know if that helps or not, but it's ephemeral credentials refers to temporary short-lived credentials generated dynamically for access privileges, accounts, or resources. Whereas with time-limited and just-in-time, it's more of a manual process. This one here is like, hey, I have this contractor. I know where they're going to be, where they're going to be accessing it, and for how long. And the system will automatically keep track of that and terminate the credentials when the contract is over. With the other two options, because it's more of a manual process, what ends up happening is sometimes you set it and forget it kind of thing, and you might leave the keys open for them to access this beyond their contract is. Okay. Question number 6. All right, so which concepts are associated with zero trust data plane? So you have policy driven access controls, policy administrator, subject systems, and implicit trust zones. Give you guys a few minutes to answer this one. Okay, so our answer is going to be subject and system, as well as implicit trust zones. So implicit trust zones and subject systems are associated with a zero trust data plane. So broadly speaking, the control plane manages users and devices in a network, while the data plane manages the movement of the data in the network. Policy-driven access control. So this is more associated with the control plane. The access decisions are made on a policy engine, while the enforcement is managed by the policy administrator in the control plane, and the policy enforcement points in the data plane. So this isn't really going to be, this is not really what we're looking for. As far as why the policy administrator doesn't work, the policy administrator is also associated with the control plane, but it decides to open and close the communication paths from the requester to the resource. The policy engine is responsible for granting and denying, but this isn't really what we're looking for in a trust-based model. Zero trust plane data model. These are control planes and not data planes. Cool. All right, so number 7. Which consequences is often incurred due to non-compliance with security regulations or standards, potentially leading to diminished trust and credibility in the eyes of a stakeholder? All right, so I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer this one. Okay, I forgot to tell you what your options are. Your options are sanctions, loss of license, reputational damage, and contractual impacts. So for this one here, again, ask yourself, what is it that they are wanting us to answer for? So the key here is potentially leading to diminished trust and credibility. When we're talking about diminished trust and credibility, we are talking about reputation. If I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to, or I have a breach and it's in the press, people are going to look at me weird. And they're going to be, hey, like, I don't want to associate myself with you any longer. That's what reputational damage is. Therefore, I cannot get new business because I cannot be trusted with securing my networks or implementing good technical or administrative controls. Sanctions, this is more governmental based. And the question wasn't asking anything about governmental. Loss of license, like this doesn't make any sense to the question itself. This is a credibility to stakeholders, not revocation of licenses. And then contractual impacts, these are usually financial based. If I breach a contract, I'm liable for X amount of money as a result of it. Again, not what the question is. So again, part of the key of test taking for the Security Plus or any of the exam is to do a process of elimination first to see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense to give you a better shot. All right, so question number 8. Which component of capacity planning in security architecture focuses on defining and implementing guidelines, rules, and documentations to ensure the effective management and security practices within an organization? Our options are technology, policies, people, and infrastructure. All right. So I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, I think in question number 1 or 2, if I'm mistaken, but in one of the earlier questions, the answer here is going to be policies. Okay. This is an administrative control. Anytime that you're talking about rules, anytime that you're talking about controls that are not technical, you're talking about administrative controls. Okay. And when you're talking about administrative controls, you're talking about policies, guidelines, or some form of documentation to the people that your organizations follows to ensure best practices from a security perspective. So the answer here is policies. Next question. All right. So a user accidentally installs a driver that had issues. You have been asked to return the computer to its state prior to the driver installation. What is the most likely and the quickest method of meeting this requirement? Okay. Our options are snapshots, memory dumps, live boot media, and master image. So the key here is the question is asking you what is the most likely and quickest method. Okay, quickest method is the key term here. So all of these answers could potentially be right except for maybe one of them, but which one is the quickest is going to be our answer. So process of elimination, which one is completely wrong? Memory dump. Okay, memory dump has nothing to do with restoring something back to previous state. It is basically saying that, hey, these are the contents that are in memory. These are all the processes that are running. This is all the failures that happen. It's basically read-only data that's being dumped. So that cannot be the answer. Live boot media, you can also remove this one as well. It is exactly what this implies. Back in the day, I'm going to date myself here. If I had a Windows machine, but I wanted to boot into Linux, I can use a live CD to get into Linux, even though that machine was technically a Windows machine. I would use a live CD, change the boot structure so that it boots from the CD, and then I would be using Linux directly off the CD. So that's what that is. So you can actually eliminate those two right off the bat. So that gives you a 50-50 chance. Now, again, the question is, which one is quicker? Snapshots or master image? A master image is basically taking a known good state, a master file, and then basically paving completely over. This is also known as like nuke and pave, or pave. Yeah, nuke and pave. You wipe out the existing operating system and you reinstall a brand new one from the master file. This will take hours to do, at best maybe 30 minutes, at worst like 2 hours. I've seen it and it's not pretty. So this cannot be our answer. Snapshots is basically what we're looking at. So when you're like in recovery mode, you can actually select a good point in time before this incident or before this driver was installed, and you can actually go or revert back to that particular state. So that is going to be our answer. Snapshots. All right, that leads us to our last question. A man wearing a service provider's coveralls. I wonder if that meant overalls. Oh, I gotta see. Well, I digress. A man wearing a service provider's coveralls and carrying a toolbox approaches your facility's security guard. He says that he works for the crew running into some new Ethernet cable inside of your office, but he left his mobile phone at home, so he can't call his crew to let him in. The security guard admits the man through the secured doors. The following week, you find an undocumented network device installed in a closet. Which social engineering attack techniques were used? So we have illicit information, impersonation, identity fraud, influence campaign, and pretexting. So I'll give you a couple of seconds here to formulate your answer. Man, remember, you're going to be using more than one answer here. All right, so this one's going to be a little bit tricky here. So we have someone who looks the feel, and they're coming up with a reason why they don't have access to it. All right, so if they are acting like someone that they're not, the very first one that we should be thinking of is impersonation. All right, FedEx, you can buy FedEx clothing clothing on auction sites like today, and you can dress up as a FedEx driver. Doesn't mean that you're actually a FedEx driver, but you can do that. This is kind of that same scenario. I look like a utility person. I look like I need to be there because I'm wearing the same outfit as someone else. That's impersonation. The other part of it is that they are saying that, hey, I can't call my crew because I left my phone at home. Can you let me in? All right. That is known as pretexting. It's when you're coming up with a reason why something isn't, to play on the emotions of the person that you're social engineering. So these are going to be your two instances here. We didn't take anything from the company or the user, so identity fraud isn't the answer here. This is kind of impersonating a victim and exploiting the victim for something usually financially related. An influence campaign, this is more of like social media, like using social media to attack someone for some type of an agenda. This is definitely not that. And then we have illicit information. This is like tricking the victim into giving us information that they shouldn't. And that was not indeed the case. So the only two options here that really fit is impersonation and pretexting. And that's it. It's our 10 questions. So hopefully you did well. Post in the comment section what you got for your score, what you got wrong, and why you think that you got it wrong. And we'll be here again for another set of Security Plus questions. Take care.